Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Louisa, and I wanted to share with you today some ideas that have really been percolating in my mind over the last few months. I've been keeping a journal with some of these thoughts, and nothing felt concrete enough to share until an image landed. And that's quite often how I come to understand something, is through a diagram or an image, which I wanted to share with you today. Something that I just hope is going to help anyone out there who's struggling with this concept of, have I made the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? And I know for myself, this wanting to get it right, wanting to do right, has been a very strong motivating driver in my life. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to do right by my parents and by school and by society. Hence the good girl thing going on for me. And, when I strayed off the path that felt like the morally right thing to do, according to what I'd been taught, those are the times in life when I've suffered the most, when I felt in the most darkness, when I have really questioned myself, my own morality, my own compass. And questioned actually is a bit of a soft word, because there's been many times when I've absolutely hated myself. That word hate is a strong one, which I probably wouldn't apply to anybody else in the world, but there's have honestly been times when I felt like I've gone so far away from the good person that I would like to be, from doing the things that I thought were right, that I've come to really hate myself for that. And without going into personal examples, I guess, if I can think of some generic things, the paths of addiction can lead us to hate ourselves. Addictions and abuse, self-abuse of any kind. When relationships break down, we might blame ourselves for that. When we have been striving to achieve something in life and we fail, or things fall apart or appear to collapse. So you might have tried very hard at various careers and it keeps disintegrating on you. So maybe it's relationships disintegrating, or maybe it's careers disintegrating. Or maybe it's just a whole bunch of patterns and behaviors that you've just come to adopt but despise about yourself. So things that you do that you really don't like. And I guess the more you do those kinds of behaviors, whatever they are for you, whether it's drinking excessively, eating the wrong food, not taking care of yourself, neglecting yourself or your life or the people, your community in some way, all of that can accumulate and become a very heavy burden that we carry, and the thoughts that accumulate around that experience, like, I failed, I'm not good enough, every time I try, I stuff it up. What's the point? It can get increasingly negative as we go into these kind of dark holes of the self. So again, I don't want to go into too much specific detail, but just to say that I'm sure we've all been in those places before. And if you're struggling with wondering whether you've done something wrong because of it, because you've ended up in these dark places, or because you're not acting the way you think you should be acting according to some standard that you've set for yourself, then this is a video for you. I really hope that it's going to lighten the load that you're carrying around this issue and free you of the judgment, right? Because ultimately what's happening is you're judging yourself for what you're doing or what you've done. Now, judgment is so, so important. I think it's something that we're all learning to work with as we raise in consciousness, because sooner or later we're going to hit our own awareness that we are judging others or that we're judging ourselves. And sometimes, let's add a third one in there, you're judging the world, right? You're judging what's going on around you. You're judging the wars. You're judging something that I judge is development, people cutting down forests to build houses, development Oh God. So whatever, I'm judging that as negative, but it can be minor. It can be like small changes in your neighborhood that you're judging. It can be people using plastic bags that you're judging. It can be anything. Judgment, right? So catch it, notice it, see it. That's certainly going to help you with this exercise. But what we'd like to do is drop our judgment. Yeah. Because the judgment is what's keeping us stuck in, I guess you could say, a fourth dimensional consciousness. So third dimensional consciousness would be purely mundane, the everyday, and the dualistic thinking, the polarity. This is good, this is bad. That's dualistic thinking. It's really black and white in third dimensional thinking. As you kind of see a higher or broader or more expanded perspective, you notice that nothing is black and white, that there's context to everything, that things make sense when you drill down really deep into them and you have a really good look at why things operate the way they do. And in the fourth dimensional consciousness, you're exploring, you're transforming the story through your own inquiry, your own curiosity, your own thought. So I would almost call fourth dimension the realm of story and belief, because that's where we're going to get to play with the meaning on things. See, we're ascribing meaning to everything. If you say that you've fallen into like a dark hole, let's say addiction, right? So you've come to a certain place in your life where you're really addicted to a substance that you know is hurting you and is hurting other people in your life. And I use that example because that's something I've been through. And you might, in the third dimensional consciousness, judge that as terrible, an absolute failure of you. Or you might be blaming other people, but you'll certainly be sitting in a kind of a victim mentality, a victim consciousness of this is bad and I am powerless, right? Now, if you raise your consciousness up a little bit to inquire about that, to think about, wait a minute, why am I addicted? Why did I get into this mess in the first place? You might come to the conclusion that, okay, well, I experienced a lot of pain in my life and my nervous system is really dysregulated because of trauma. And of course, I find whatever the substance of your choice is to be soothing. It's a kind of self-medication, right? So self-medicating is another way of reframing addiction that has a less judgmental feel. And you can explore with that. You can change the meaning of what you're doing. And that's a very simple explanation because there's many, many stories you can tell about that scenario. Self-medicating is just one of them, right? And it isn't to abdicate responsibility. It's just to be able to see the story from lots of different perspectives and realize that it's complicated, right? It's complicated. Now, if you stay in fourth dimension, you might decide to judge yourself. You might come up with a whole lot of different stories about why you're addicted and then choose one as your final judgment, right? It's like to yourself, you are the prosecutor and the judge and the offender. So you're bringing all this evidence to yourself and saying, look at all these possible things that could be. Am I guilty or not? What say you, inner judge? So a lot of the time we're having this fight in our minds about whether or not we're right or wrong, or if it's okay or not. Should you be in judgment of yourself or not? If you are in judgment of yourself, what should then happen? What should your punishment be? Okay. So this can be very unconscious. We might not even be aware of it. But if you really catch your thinking, and this is where journaling is so great, you can maybe even have a conversation with your inner judge and ask your inner judge to critique you and see what comes out. And you realize, oh, that voice is playing in there. Okay. Now, I would like to today raise you above judgment so that you can transcend this fourth dimensional, I guess, bandwidth of consciousness where you're wanting to judge and wanting to make sense and meaning out of it and distill it into more of what I would call a fifth dimensional concept of non-judgment. Cool. So I have created this drawing for you. And as I said, this was very much came to me as a kind of inspiration from my higher self, my guides, to show to me how we can never, ever truly go wrong, right? But we're always on the right path, no matter what. Because the game in this world is not about getting it right. It's about loving yourself. Okay. So this drawing hopefully is going to illustrate this. So I'm going to hold it up here. And if it doesn't turn out really good on the camera, I'll also put a big version up on screen. Ooh, it's a bit tricky to do. Okay. So you can see in the middle there, that yellow part, I've called God/love. So if the word God doesn't work for you, that's okay. Just swap that out for any other word that represents all that is, the great quantum intelligent field of all that is, that made you and I, the creator, right? The creative force, the creative energy. And also known as love and light, because it is pure love. Having experienced enough of it now myself in my life and my moments of enlightened, I guess, connection and communication, I know the state to be of pure love in the center there. So what we do, these little maze-like trails indicate pathways we take in life, right? Just like a labyrinth, or like a choose your own adventure book for those of you who grew up in the 80s. But for younger audiences, let's say a video game, right? Pathways that you can choose in life. And this is so simplified because, of course, pathways are infinitely complex. I mean, every single time we make a choice, we change timelines or pathways. We go down a new pathway. We've changed things. We're heading down a new pathway. So each of these little where the branch, the road, the pathway splits in two, that's a choice point. And there are countless choice points in your life, in fact, in every day. Now, if you make choice points that are based in love, which is represented by the yellow color here, you're going to stay around the peripheral, right, of the circle of God love. You're going to stay what I call is close to God. And in a 3D or 4D perspective, we would call that, being quite saintly, morally right. But remember, there is no right or wrong here. I will illustrate that in a minute. But from a worldly perspective, we would look at that and go, well, that person is a really good person, a really loving person. And we would judge that as good. So the minute, though, we start to make choices that are based less in love, now that can be love for self or love for others, right? So we're doing things that are unloving to self or others. Even in small ways, we start to stray into the orange bits. So we're getting away from the yellow, we're now moving to orange. And then, we start to do things a little bit more shadily, shonkily, hide things, lies, deceit, right? Moving away from love. And you could also say truth, moving away from truth. Only you know what that feels like. So I'm not going to say what is correct here or not. But it's that little, it always comes down to that little moment in your own heart where you go, oh, I know I shouldn't be doing this. I know this is deceitful or somehow dishonest or is going to hurt somebody or is going to hurt myself, right? Could be eating that tub of ice cream, but you do it anyway, right? So small or big, as you do more and more of those kinds of actions, unloving actions, you start to move into the blues and the purples here. And if I go on this side, you'll see I've drawn kind of how far out they get, how far away they get from God's source energy. Now you'll see here, whoops, it's so hard to do this backwards. You'll see here that it comes eventually to a kind of a dead end, right? Now this represents the course of doing so many unloving acts to either yourself or others that you go more and more into the darkness, more and more away from the light of truth and love. And when you come to these holes or these dead ends, these caves of darkness, let's call them, right? There comes a point where you can go no further. There is an end point as to how separated from God you can get. And I'm not even like showing the all of it here, because human beings, or what I meant was, I'm not going to be able to describe what that might look like, because I don't think many human beings on the planet ever get so far into unconsciousness. That's another word for this, unconsciousness, right? This is consciousness, being with God. This is, or being with the light and the love and the truth. And it's unconscious to be not with it, not near it, acting not in alignment with that. So I'm not even sure I could describe the depths that one could get to in that negative polarity. It's another way of putting it. But we all, at some point, even if we're really, really good human beings and we like to stay in love and light, and we're essentially loving creatures, we will still all get to our version of that cave where we will feel separated and abandoned by God or source or all that is. In that place, it's very dark, it's very lonely, it's very sad. In that place, we are mired in emotions like shame and guilt and fear, sometimes terror, sometimes loathing. Very, very strong emotions that are that are a lot, that are very extremely hard to bear, hard to face, hard to feel. So we'll all have those experiences at times in life, just as we all have the peak experiences when we do feel the opposite, ultimately connected to that love that we really are. So when I say God, I mean it's you, it's your essential nature, it's the deep love, the pure love, the unconditional love that you truly are. As you stray further and further from that, you will find yourself in these places of darkness, of unconsciousness, of feeling abandoned, and in a lot of pain. So, coming back to that question of, is every path I ever take the right one? Could that be that every path I ever take is the right one? Then we ask, how can that be if we end up in such a dark place? And the answer is this. Because when you get to that dark place, your challenge is to love yourself, right? That's your challenge. And it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means you're having another experience of what it is to love yourself. And this is the human endeavor. How much can you love? How much can you love yourself? How much can you love others? How much can you open your heart? How much can you be in surrender to love? And it's easy when things are going well. It's easy when you're hovering around the perimeter of that love light energy, right? Feeling connected, feeling supported. Things are always working well in that realm. You know, people like you, and you're eating good food probably, and you can hear the birds singing. It's like a Disney movie. But when you stray away from that, again, no judgment, just because you're having an experience, that's when things get tough. That's when not everybody loves you. That's when, you know, circumstances tend to get denser, more difficult. Things go wrong. The bills pile up, debts, homelessness, all sorts of things. And I'm not judging those. I'm not saying that people who experience those things are there because of depravity, again, or they failed or they've done something wrong. No, I'm saying that you're having an experience. If you're in that place, you're having an experience that is going to call you to love yourself. And you can turn around at any time on that path and love yourself, which is to elevate yourself completely out of the frequency of judgment, raise yourself into the frequency of love, and watch as the universe rearranges itself around you to give you a different experience. Because our experiences is based on our frequency, and our frequency is based on what we're feeling for ourselves. And you can't fake it. You can't pretend to love yourself when you're in that place. You actually have to genuinely find that deep love. Again, love for self and love for others. So it's an incredible challenge, but also quite beautiful, I find, that the answer is so simple. Wherever you are in your journey, it's always you're being called home to love. And maybe now, if I can kind of read a little of my journal to put it in some different words, maybe some better words. Sometimes when this information comes through to me, when it's really fresh, it can just have some power that I can't maybe summon down the track. So I labeled this little section "More Revelations about Enlightenment," because that's what we're talking about here. Enlightenment. This is to be here, is to be enlightened. Enlightened in the light. Right. So more revelations about enlightenment. Is that right? God came to me last night and said, and caveat, I use the word God quite happily because I was raised with not strict Catholic, but I was raised in that Western culture of believing in God and Jesus. So for me, as a child, I really attach to that word, and I don't see it as a being in the sky. I just see it, I see it as, the energy of our source and of our cosmos and of our universe. So I could also have said, universe came to me last night and said, what if every path you take is the right one? What if every path you take is the right one? How does that feel to think about life like that? Wow, I wrote. I feel such relief when I read that statement. And why is it true? Because every experience we have in life is another opportunity to love ourselves as we are. And sometimes we do things which challenge greatly our capacity to love ourselves. We feel deep shame, remorse, and guilt. And when we are in such places of darkness, we tend to want to escape these feelings and make it not so. So it is that struggle which sustains and prolongs our sojourn in the darkness. However long it takes to love ourselves again, that is how long we must spend there. And when we do finally succumb to love, be it in the guise of self-compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, or surrender, we find ourselves miraculously at the 0 point field once again, back home in the arms and heart of God. And when we get good at this through lifetimes of practice, when we have sat in every dark crevice possible of our own mind, and we experience in every dark crevice possible of our own mind and experience. And when we have transmuted all of this into love, the process becomes automatic, and we call this enlightenment. Seen in this light, every experience we have is simply an invitation to love ourselves and life anew. When you genuinely love yourself and others, no matter what, underlined, it is game over. You are an embodiment of God consciously, as opposed to unconsciously, which most people are unconscious of it, but we are that. So, dear friend, wherever you are right now, whatever you're doing, whatever you're feeling, it is right. It is perfectly right. You cannot make a mistake. You cannot ever be less than divine in the eyes of all that is. You are always, always love and light. And everything else is just an experience. So may you forgive yourself. May you accept yourself. May you love yourself. And may you allow yourself to transform any of these experiences into love. That's all you need to do. Okay, I think that's probably the point made. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in my next video. Namaste.